Hi everyone, thanks for attending this talk. This presentation is a preliminary report on the results of a 2-year project to construct a 3D bedrock hydrostratigraphic model of southern Ontario. I'd just like to acknowledge at the beginning that funding for this project is provided by the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, the Geological Survey of Canada, the Oil, Gas and Salt Resources Library, and MyTax, a federal research funding organization in Canada. The three-dimensional hydrostratigraphic model of the Paleozoic bedrock of southern Ontario that I'm presenting here is built on a 3D geological model completed in early 2021. Both models are constructed using Leapfrog Works modeling software at 400-meter resolution. In this presentation, I'll give you an overview of the 3D geological model and the principal features of the hydrostratigraphic model. The focus is on non-potable groundwater regimes at intermediate to deep depths and connections to the shallow groundwater regime. The value of shallow groundwater is well established. It provides potable water, base flow to streams and wetlands, irrigation, heat sinks for geothermal heating and cooling, etc. The deeper saline aquifers are less well recognized as having any value, but they're utilized for disposal of oil-filled brines and industrial wastes, carbon capture and storage potential. They cause a corrosion hazard for steel and concrete. They provide hydrochemical isotopic evidence supporting construction of geological repositories for long-term isolation of nuclear waste. So 3D modeling provides a powerful tool for regional visualization of geological and hydrogeological relationships in the subsurface bedrock, supporting any subsurface resource management in these rocks. In case you'd like to download the published 3D model and the publications associated with it, this slide just shows the links to the model and the report. This is a regional view of the new 3D Paleozoic bedrock geological model, showing the bedrock formations coded in different colors and the legend for these formations down the side. There's 53 Paleozoic bedrock layers represented on here, plus the Precambrian was stripped off the superficial geology. There was considerable interest in a post on LinkedIn in early January, which attracted 28,000 views and over 400 likes. In the post, we show a simplified 3D print of the model with 4 layers coded by geological age. This is a stratigraphic chart of the Paleozoic bedrock formations in southern Ontario. It is used to guide the stratigraphic coding of model layers. Model layers represent individual formations or grouped formations where necessitated by data quality, quantity, or thin formations. The erosional profile of the subcrop edges is represented on the chart, showing the frequent occurrence of carbonate-capped cuestas. Of particular importance for groundwater movement are the occurrence of regional paleokarst horizons where carbonate strata were subarally exposed at erosional disconformities in the geologic past. Geologic features relevant to hydrostratigraphy include structures like arches, basins, regional dip and faults, porous, permeable bedrock as inferred from water interval records, topography, bedrock topography, salt dissolution, subsidence, collapse features, regional karst and paleokarst horizons. Development of a hydrostratigraphic model is supported by a variety of data. There's the water well database of the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. There's 160,000 wells that penetrate bedrock. The petroleum well database is again a principal source of data, just as it is in the lithostratigraphic model. We've compiled published hydraulic conductivity estimates. Field observations and drill core are a very important part of this process, and chemical and isotopic analyses, for example, from SCOOS and SCOOS et al. Now, to convert from a lithostratigraphic to a hydrostratigraphic model, there are several challenges in making that conversion. First, we need to understand the regional hydrogeological framework, which includes where's the groundwater, hydraulic conductivity, geological controls, flow directions. There is a regional hydrochemical zonation of groundwater by depth, by water type. We want to know where the interfaces between those water types are, the base of the fresh water and the base of the sulfur water. We need to assign the lithostratigraphic units as hydrostratigraphic units. The hydrostratigraphic framework represented by the model is defined and described in detail in Volume 48 of Geoscience Canada, published in early 2021. There are records for 27,000 petroleum wells in southern Ontario, of which 15,600 wells have 35,000 water interval records recorded in the Ontario Petroleum Data System. This slide is a 3D data cloud of petroleum well water intervals coded by water type. You can clearly see the hydrochemical depth zonation. The gaps are regional aquitards. There are three hydrochemical groundwater regimes in the subsurface of southern Ontario. A shallow regime of predominantly bicarbonate-rich freshwater in the glacial and recent sediments at the contact with bedrock and in shallow karstic bedrock. An intermediate regime of brackish to saline sulfur and sulfate-rich water in paleokarst horizons at depths of approximately 30 to 350 meters, and a deep water regime of ancient evaporated seawater dominated by dense brines in paleokarst horizons at depths greater than 200 meters with up-dip hydraulic gradients. This is a visual representation of the previous slide displayed on a scaled geological cross-section of southern Ontario. Shown in blue are the shallow freshwater and yellow the intermediate depth sulfur water regime, and in orange the deep basinal brines. Water movement is down dip along paleokarst horizons in the shallow to intermediate regime and up dip along the same horizons in the deep brines. 15 hydrostratigraphic units have been identified as illustrated on this chart. HSU names are listed in the left column. The erosional profile of the bedrock formations is shown along the right. 7 of the hydrostratigraphic units are classified as aquifers. The remainder are aquitards or aquicludes. Colors for the aquifers are as in the previous slides. Freshwater occurs in 3 shallow water aquifer systems. One in the superficial sediments, HSU2, and a contact aquifer at the sediment bedrock interface, and HSU3 in shallow karst developed at the subcrop edges of carbonate formations. In intermediate to deep subsurface, thin aquifers of brackish to saline sulfur water or brine occur in paleokarst horizons developed at disconformities at the upper surface of carbonate bedrock formations where they were exposed to subaerial weathering in the geologic past. This chart just summarizes the 15 identified hydrostratigraphic units. Their color coding on here is by water type. Again, blue is freshwater, yellow is sulfur water, and the orange is brine. For each one of these is summarized the lithology and the published hydraulic conductivity data. I won't go through this in any more detail in this presentation. This is a regional view of our 3D hydrostratigraphic model looking north from Lake Erie and tipped up to the north on its edge. And colored layers on here are the principal aquifers in the subsurface. They're color-coded by water type, and the units in gray are all the aquitards. These next 4 slides show the principal groundwater aquifers in the bedrock. Each of them shows a gradation from saltwater brine through sulfur water to freshwater, going from the deepest parts of the subsurface to subcrop. And this first one is the Lucas-Dundee aquifer. This slide shows the Bass Islands-Bertie aquifer going from about 350 meters to depth to subcrop. This slide is for the Guelph aquifer, showing the hydrochemical zonation from a depth of approximately 700 meters to subcrop. This is the deepest of those bedrock groundwater aquifers, the Cambrian. It's entirely brine. There is no subcrop exposure of the Cambrian in southwestern Ontario. There are 2 maps shown here. The larger shows depth of occurrence of fresh water beneath the bedrock surface as reported in water wells. Areas of red, yellow, and light blue are the deepest intervals. Dark blue shows areas where fresh water occurs generally less than 4 meters below the top of bedrock. The smaller map shows interpretation of the areas of deepest freshwater as shallow inferred karst in the 3D model. We've been able to construct groundwater level surfaces for two of the principal regional groundwater aquifers in the subsurface of southern Ontario. One for the Lucas-Dundee aquifer, shown here, and one for the Cambrian. In this example, the groundwater level surface is interpolated from petroleum well static level data for the Lucas-Dundee aquifer. The recorded water level is several tens of meters above the aquifer itself, and locally is above the ground surface. Potential artesian flow of Lucas-Dundee sulfur water to the surface is a drilling and environmental hazard in parts of Norfolk, Elgin, and Oxford counties, as shown here. Numerous petroleum wells with reported sulfur water levels above ground surface in this area. And the model shows large areas of potential discharge beneath Lake Erie and topographic lows in creek valleys. And this example is for the Cambrian aquifer. Again, the groundwater level surface is interpolated from petroleum well static level data for the Cambrian brine aquifer. And in this case, the recorded water level is several hundred meters above the aquifer, and locally is above the ground surface. There is enough water analytical data from the Lockport group plus the Salina A1 and A2 units to construct a groundwater salinity gradient map. I'm just showing you an example of that here. You can see increasing salinity with depth from the subcrop belt. This map is a 3D data cloud showing the reported depths of hydrocarbon minerals, oil and natural gas reported from petroleum wells, and the gaps correspond to aquatards that are preventing and inhibiting the flow of hydrocarbons in the subsurface. The 3D volumes you see represented on this figure represent oil and gas reservoirs in the subsurface of southern Ontario, from which commercial quantities of oil and natural gas have been produced by petroleum wells drilled into these reservoirs in the past. In summary, we have built a 3D hydrostratigraphic model with 15 model hydrostratigraphic units. Important components include a hydrostratigraphic chart, oil, gas, water, interval data clouds, 3D oil and gas reservoirs, water level surfaces for selected aquifers, inferred shallow karst, and base of water components. Model release is anticipated in mid-2022 with a report to follow in late 2022. Figures in this presentation were prepared using free viewer software available from sequent.com. If anyone has comments or suggestions for improvement, please let me know and we may be able to incorporate into the model. And one last takeaway, I believe this project illustrates the value of properly designed and maintained borehole data sets for regional geologic and hydrogeologic modeling. Thank you very much.